fellow travelers. As always, chapters are a thing and useful stuff is in the description. Please like and subscribe to help me grow, and let's get going. In Chamber 1 of Floor 11, first team will have to deal with increased physical and electro resistances, wooden shields and electro shields. You can burn wooden shields with pyro, use abilities that hit not from the front or just circle around them. And against electro ones, pyro, cryo and dendro are equally efficient, so use whatever suits you more. First wave always starts with shielded churros charging at you, so just run behind the ones with access to easily group them up. Same goes for the next wave. Lava churros jump at you after they appear, so run behind one of them and just let them come towards you. And maybe rely on burst iframes to avoid damage. Second half includes flying mimics, so having a character who can reach them is a must. Raptors are weak to Electro and frogs are weak to Geo, but you also have to deal with Hydro shields, against which Dendro is actually the best option. Cryo works well against all of them too, so I'd suggest to just bring the counter to whatever you find the most troublesome. Also consider bringing good healers or shields here to counter Hydro bombs left by the frogs. The entire second half of Floor 11 includes enemies with cooldown increasing auras. You can get rid of it if you manage to remove Hydro from your characters by applying other elements to yourself, but if you can't, remember that it multiplies your cooldowns, so it's less detrimental if you have abilities with short cooldowns in the first place. Give preference to those, or even to characters who don't rely on abilities too much to deal damage or apply elements when it comes to building teams for the second half. Ruin enemies in Chamber 2 have increased physical resistance, and that's pretty much it. The only other thing I found useful is that Bloom and Virgin work exceptionally well here, because exploding cores easily stun Ruin Drakes all the time, but any decent non-physical team should suffice. New Hilichurl rogues in second half have increased resistance to their respective elements, and Geo bishops have increased Geo resistance, physical resistance, as well as resistance to absorbed elements, which in this case will be Cryo and Hydro, so stick to other elements if possible. You can easily stack Hilichurls in the very beginning just by using an archer. Run behind one of the Animo Churls and pop its balloon. Other Churls will come close to it, and once you pop the second balloon, you'll be ready to fight. Both Hilichurls and Bishops deal quite a lot of damage, so bring decent healing or shielding to have easier time with them. Black Serpents in Chamber 3 have increased physical resistance as well as resistance to their respective elements, so Animo, Dendro and Electro will be your best bet here. They also heavily counter shields, so it's better to not rely on them here. As always, kill both Kairagi at the same time to prevent them from healing, and when it comes to Serpents, they start close to each other, so simply focusing on ranged ones is enough to keep them together. As for the second half, Mirror Maidens have increased Hydro resistance, and if you don't have enough damage, bring counters to Skirmishers' shields. Fighting skirmishers shouldn't be too hard, but it's quite difficult to fight both maidens at once just because they constantly teleport away from you. It's still possible to kill them one by one in time, but keep in mind that they both have cooldown increasing auras, so remember what I said before, shorter cooldowns and dispelling abilities will be very helpful here. Here's what we get in the end and the teams I managed to clear this floor with. Remember, I use random stuff to see how bad of a team can still clear it all, so don't copy them if you have something better, use ideas instead. Finally, no more Vinod. Now this should be easy. Chamber 1 of Floor 12 is the toughest one in this rotation. New consecrated beasts are much worse than the ones we've seen before. They still have high resistance, especially to their own elements, and ignore pretty much everything you do, but they also move way too much during their attacks, which makes fighting them unreasonably difficult. In addition to that, second half features two waves of enemies that also like to move around a lot and spread apart. If you can't overcome them with just raw damage, you'll have to rely on something extra: AoEs, luck, poise and pulling abilities. Let's talk about poise first, or as it's called in game, resistance to interruption. Beasts are extremely difficult to stagger, but can easily stagger you. Increasing your poise allows you to deal damage no matter what they do. The most common source of poise is shields. Alongside with them, you can get party-wide bonuses with Beido's Burst, Sincho's Rain Swords, Dia's skill and Goro's skill, plus abilities that trigger special stances such as Bursts of Raiden and Sino, or skills of Ayato and Hutao, for example, also increase your poise, so I highly recommend relying on those to make your rotations more consistent in the first half. When the fight starts, do not rush towards the enemies. The worst random you can get is Ruin Defenders activating their barriers. They block all attacks from the front and it's a huge time waste. However, they have only 2 ranged attacks. They can either shoot a laser at you or jump on you. The ideal scenario is of course both of them doing the latter. With Big Guy pushing the noodle forward as well, you'll stack them all nicely in just a few seconds. But even if one of them decides to shoot you instead, it will then just come towards you and you still won't have to struggle with their barriers. Deal with them using any AoE team you prefer, it shouldn't be a problem. Just be careful with abilities that can launch your characters in the air. If you do so while Ruin Hunter is not attacking, it will fly up and bombard you from there, which is again an unnecessary time waste. When beasts appear, rush to the Hydra one and stick to its tail or sides. Its charging attack is much more annoying than anything Dendro Beast can do, and it's the best way to avoid being pushed by it. It's impossible to predict how the fight will go, so just soak the hits and keep dealing damage. Destroy shards that beasts summon as soon as possible with elemental attacks to deal significant damage, stun the beasts and remove their resistance buffs. And remember that their special attacks that create shards have aftershocks, so dash again after a short delay if you want to avoid being hit by them. For the second half, you have to bring enough crowd control to keep enemies together, so you can nuke them with AoEs. The more damage you deal, the less pulling you'll need, and vice versa. If you don't have enough damage and Funga and Samurais keep spreading apart, freeze teams are your best bet to hold them together, and it might also help with Beast combo. This one is a bit easier because Scorpion is quite predictable, but they are still tough opponents, so stay focused. I had to use quite strong teams here, but I had some time left to spare with these in the end. And the last advice I can give you here is skip this chamber and work on the other 2 first. They are much easier and you'll be less stressed about this one once you finish everything else. First half of the second chamber has only Ion Blight Drake. Just bring an archer to easily stun the boss and don't rely on physical damage. Link to the full guide is in the description if you want to learn more about the boss. Hilichurls in second half have increased Hydro resistance, and against Eremite elites, it's better to rely on their own elements to quickly deal with their pets and deal additional damage to them afterwards. Run away from Hilichurls in the beginning to gather them together. Once you finish them, head towards Gale Hunter. Pyro Eremite has an attack that forces her to teleport to you, and the other 2 fight in melee, so once again it's just the easiest way to stack them. It's pretty much impossible to properly dodge attacks in the following mess, so make sure you can survive it. These were the teams I used to clear this chamber and their builds for power level reference. Last chamber is probably the easiest one of the current floor 12. It starts with just a Simon, which you can easily counter with Quicken. I explained how to deal with it before in its own guide and in breakdown for version 3.4. And in the same version we had to fight Trio Kenki as well. It seems they got slightly improved AI this time, but you can still lure the first cryofield away, so you won't have to fight in it, and circle around the mask aspect during the fight to keep Trio together. The other 2 step towards you when they attack, so they will keep coming closer and you'll be able to damage all 3 at once. I've cleared this chamber with the same teams I used for the previous one. Anyway, that's all I have for you this time, fellow travelers. Good luck with your runs and have a great rest of your day.